Good afternoon. My name is Clara. I am seated with writer Salene Hill this late morning. Like most middle-agers, Ms. Hill and her friends are in the times of taking care of their older parents. Caring takes patience, time, and effort. No one doctor can write a prescription that guarantees that the elderly individual will do a complete recovery of dementia or Alzheimer's. Medical technology has come a long way by diagnosing the simplest forms of diseases, but not dementia. Ms. Hill will start the first scenario, and her two friends, Julie and Mark, will follow. Let's begin.
The first slips, told from the perspective of the daughter, Elena. Elena watched her mother in the soft glow of the kitchen, a space that had always felt like the heart of their home. The aroma of simmering sauce usually filled the air, a testament to her mother's culinary prowess. Tonight, however, the air was tinged with a different acrid scent, the scent of things burning. It had started with the stove, just a little thing, really. A pan left heating, forgotten, with nothing inside. Smoke curling lazily towards the ceiling, triggering the smoke alarm's shrill cry. Elena had rushed in, waving a tea towel, heart hammering against her ribs. Mom had always been sharp, meticulous, a veritable domestic goddess, always in control. To see her like this, disoriented and apologetic, was deeply unsettling. You trying to make smoke signals, Ma? Elena had joked, trying to lighten the mood, to brush it off as a simple oversight. Her mother, Sarah, a woman who had always met life with a twinkle in her eye and a witty retort on her tongue, had laughed, but the sound was thin, strained, and her eyes, those bright, intelligent blue eyes that Elena had always admired, flickered with things she could not decipher, uncertainty or a distant fear. Just a senior moment, darling, Sarah had said, waving her hand dismissively. Happens to the best of us. But Elena knew deep down that it was more than just a senior moment. Senior moments were fleeting, easily explained. This felt different, deeper. Then it was the appointments. Sarah, who had meticulously managed her calendar for decades, suddenly forgot her dentist visit. Elena found the appointment card tucked into her mother's purse, untouched. When gently reminded, Sarah's brow furrowed, her memory elusive. "Oh dear, I completely blanked," she had said, her voice laced with a worry that mirrored Elena's own. Grocery shopping, once a simple pleasure, became a source of confusion. Even with the list clutched in her hand, Sarah got disoriented, picking up the wrong items, forgetting others, wandering aimlessly through the aisles, her face etched with anxiety. Elena had started accompanying her to help carry the bags, but really to ensure she made it home without incident. It had been 5 years since Dad passed. Grief, raw and unrelenting, had initially engulfed them both. Elena wondered if that was it, if it was a delayed reaction, a lingering sadness manifesting itself in these forgetful episodes. We all forget things, she reasoned. We all get tired. Life was hard, and at 78, Mom was just slowing down. But Elena knew, with growing certainty, that she chilled her to the bone, that it was not just that. The pattern was too consistent, the lapses too pronounced. It was not about forgetting a name or misplacing her keys. It was about a fundamental shift in her mother's cognitive landscape. She tentatively broached the subject with her brother, Mark, who lived out of state. He brushed it off, attributing it to old age and loneliness. "You're probably overreacting, Elena," he had said over the phone, his voice laced with the familiar dismissiveness that had always grated on her nerves. Just keep an eye on her, okay? She will be fine. Easy for you to say, Elena muttered under her breath as she hung up. The responsibility, as always, seemed to fall squarely on her shoulders. Driven by a growing sense of urgency, Elena had made an appointment with a neurologist, Dr. Kaplan. He was a kind man with patient eyes that seemed to see right through her anxieties and into her soul. He spoke slowly, his words measured and deliberate, as he explained the results of the cognitive tests he had administered to Sarah. Early stage Alzheimer's dementia, he said, like it was a weight he had learned to carry lightly after delivering the same diagnosis countless times, but it landed heavy on Elena's chest, crushing the air from her lungs. The words hung in the sterile air of the office. A death sentence for the woman she knew and loved. Elena felt a surge of anger, a desperate need to argue, to deny the reality of the diagnosis. This could not be happening, not to her mother, not to them. But she knew with a sickening certainty that Dr. Kaplan was right. The evidence was there, undeniable. Mom sat quietly beside her, unfazed. She nodded politely, asked questions about medication and treatment options, and even managed a small, reassuring smile. Her composure was unnerving, almost surreal. In the parking lot, as Elena carefully helped her mother into the car, Sarah turned to her, her brow furrowed with confusion. "That man was lovely," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of traffic. But what was he talking about? Am I sick?" Elena's heart shattered. She could not answer. The words caught in her throat, choked by a wave of grief and fear. How could she explain to her mother that the very essence of who she was, her memories, her intellect, her personality, were slowly but surely being stolen away? She managed a weak smile and squeezed her mother's hand. "He was just running tests, Ma, just being thorough." Sarah accepted this explanation, her confusion momentarily assuaged. But Elena knew that this was just the beginning, the first of slips, the first cracks in the dam held back the rising tide of Alzheimer's. The following months were a blur of doctor's appointments, medication adjustments, and endless research. Elena became her mother's caretaker, her advocate, her protector. She learned to navigate the labyrinthine world of healthcare, to decipher medical jargon, and to advocate for her mother's needs. The slips continued, becoming more frequent, more pronounced. Sarah forgot names, faces, places. She misplaced things constantly, accused Elena of hiding her belongings, and grew increasingly agitated and paranoid. The kitchen, once her sanctuary, became a source of anxiety. She could no longer cook without constant supervision. The risk of another forgotten pan, another potential fire, too great. Elena tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, clinging to the routines and rituals that had defined their lives for so long. They watched old movies together, listened to Sarah's favorite music, and went for walks in the park. But the joy had leached out of these activities, replaced by a gnawing sadness, a constant awareness of what was being lost. One afternoon, as they sat on a park bench watching children play frisbee, Sarah turned to Elena, her eyes filled with a deep, unsettling emptiness. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice whisper. The question pierced Elena's heart like a shard of ice. It was the moment she had dreaded, the moment she knew was inevitable. But hearing the words spoken aloud, hearing her own mother, the woman who had known her since the moment she was born, fail to recognize her, was almost unbearable. Elena took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that threatened to overwhelm her. She gently took her mother's hand and looked her in the eye. "I'm Elena, Ma, your daughter." Sarah scrutinized her face, her eyes searching for a spark of recognition. For a moment, Elena thought she saw a flicker of understanding, a glimmer of the woman she knew and loved. But then the light faded, replaced by the same vacant expression. "Elena," Sarah repeated, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. "That's a pretty name." Elena closed her eyes, allowing the tears to finally fall. This was it, she realized. The first stage of failure. Long goodbye. In the years that followed, Elena watched as her mother slowly slipped away piece by piece. The vibrant, intelligent woman she had known was gradually replaced by a frail, confused shadow. Sarah lost her ability to speak, to feed herself, to control her bodily functions. She became completely dependent on Elena, requiring round-the-clock care. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and often heartbreaking. But Elena never wavered in her commitment to her mother. She bathed her, fed her, changed her, and held her hand through the long, sleepless nights. She spoke to her, read to her, and played her favorite music, even when Sarah no longer recognized her or understand what was happening. Elena knew that her mother might not remember her name, might not remember their shared history, but she believed that on level, she still felt her presence, still felt her love. And in those moments, when Sarah's eyes would briefly focus and a faint smile would flicker across her lips, Elena knew that she was right, that even as the disease ravaged her mind, the essence of her mother, her spirit, her soul remained. The day Sarah finally passed away, Elena felt a profound sense of loss, a grief so deep and all-encompassing that it threatened to swallow her whole. But amidst the sorrow, there was also a sense of peace, a sense of closure. Her mother was finally free, free from the prison of her own mind, free from the suffering that had haunted her for so long. As Elena stood by her mother's graveside, she remembered the woman she had been, the woman she would always cherish, the woman who had taught her to love, to laugh, and to live, the woman whose memory, unlike her own, would never fade. And she knew with a certainty that warmed her heart that even in the darkness of Alzheimer's, the love they shared had remained, a beacon of light that would guide her through the rest of her days. The first slips might have stolen her mother's memories, but they could never steal their bond.
Shifting roles.
Dr. Kumar adjusted his glasses, the fluorescent lights of his office reflecting off the lenses. He hated this part of his job. There was no effortless way to give a diagnosis of dementia. There is no single moment it feels right, no script that feels gentle enough. He had spent years honing his bedside manner, learning to soften the blow with empathy and information, but the news always landed hard. With Mrs. Hartley, he saw the confusion in her eyes before the words left his mouth. She was proud, her posture straight, her speech refined, her memories once sharp as needles. He remembered their initial consultation. Mrs. Hartley, then 78, had arrived impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, recounting anecdotes from her travels with a vibrant clarity that belied her age. She spoke of museums in Florence, operas in Vienna, and bustling markets in Marrakesh, each memory a polished gem in a vast collection. But time was thinning those threads now, gently pulling her away from the woman she had always been. The first signs had been subtle, misplacing her keys, forgetting appointments, repeating stories she had just told. Trivial things easily dismissed as senior moments until they started to accumulate, forming a worrying pattern. Her daughter, Elena, had noticed first, of course. Rose sat beside her mother, her hand resting lightly on Mrs. Hartley's arm. Dr. Kumar had seen this scene play out countless times in his career. The adult children, once looking to their parents for guidance and support, now find themselves in the unfamiliar role of protector and advocate. They sat in polite desperation, asking about medications, about timelines, about hope. Mrs. Hartley, Dr. Kumar began, his voice gentle. The tests indicate cognitive impairment, specifically signs consistent with early-stage Alzheimer's disease. The words hung in the air, heavy and unwelcome. Mrs. Hartley blinked, her brow furrowed. Alzheimer's? But I'm perfectly fine. Rose squeezed her mother's arm. Mom. Dr. Kumar leaned forward, his gaze steady and compassionate. It's understandable that you're surprised, Mrs. Hartley. The symptoms can be subtle at first, but based on the scans and the cognitive assessments, this is the most likely diagnosis. He explained the disease as patiently as he could, detailing the progressive nature of the illness, the potential impact on memory, language, and behavior. He spoke of the available medications, the therapies, the lifestyle adjustments that could help slow the progression and manage the symptoms. The most difficult part is not just the loss of memory, Doctor. Kumar knew. It is the loss of identity. Independence, control. He watched Rose slowly morph from child to caregiver. In that instant, the dynamic shifted irrevocably. Rose, who had been seeking her mother's wisdom and support just months ago, was now the one offering comfort and a plan. What can we do, Doctor? Rose asked, her voice tight with a mixture of fear and determination. What's the best course of action? He laid out their options carefully, explaining the benefits and limitations of each. Medications could help manage the symptoms, but they would not stop the underlying disease. Cognitive therapy could help Mrs. Hartley maintain her mental functions longer, and lifestyle changes, like regular exercise and a healthy diet, could support overall brain health. And what about the future? Rose pressed, her voice barely whisper. How long? How long will she? Dr. Kumar hesitated. There was no effective way to answer that question. Every case was different. The progression of Alzheimer's varied from person to person. He could not give her a precise timeline. It's impossible to say for certain, he admitted. But with proper care and support, Mrs. Hartley can continue to live a fulfilling life for years to come. The key is to focus on the present, to create a supportive environment, and to cherish the moments you have together. He saw the tears welling up in Rose's eyes. He reached for a box of tissues and offered them to her. He knew that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. In the weeks that followed, Dr. Kumar saw Mrs. Hartley and Rose frequently. He adjusted her medications, monitored her cognitive function, and provided them with resources and support. He connected them with a local Alzheimer's support group where they could meet other families facing similar challenges. He watched Rose navigate the complexities of caregiving, learning to balance her own life with the demands of supporting her mother. She enrolled Mrs. Hartley in a day program where she could socialize with other seniors and participate in stimulating activities. She made modifications to her mother's home to make it safer and more accessible. He also saw the toll that caregiving took on Rose, the exhaustion, the frustration, the guilt. She struggled to maintain her own work and social life, often feeling overwhelmed and isolated. One afternoon, Rose came to see Dr. Kumar alone, her face etched with worry. I don't know how much longer I can do this, she confessed, her voice cracking. I love my mother, but I am so tired. I feel like I'm losing myself. Dr. Kumar listened patiently, offering her a sympathetic ear. He knew that caregiver burnout was a widespread problem. It's important to take care of yourself, Rose, he said gently. You can't pour from an empty cup. You need to find ways to recharge and to get support. He suggested that she consider respite care, where a professional caregiver could take over for hours or days, giving her a much-needed break. He also encouraged her to join a caregiver support group, where she could connect with others who understood what she was going through. As the months passed, Dr. Kumar witnessed the gradual decline in Mrs. Hartley's cognitive function. Her memory worsened, her language became more limited, and her behavior became more unpredictable. There were moments of lucidity when she would briefly recall a cherished memory or recognize a familiar face, but these moments became increasingly rare. The most heartbreaking moments were when Mrs. Hartley would become confused and frightened, not recognizing her own daughter. "Who are you?" she would ask, her voice filled with anxiety. "Where am I?" Rose would respond with unwavering patience and love, gently reassuring her mother that she was safe and loved. She would hold her hand, stroke her hair, and sing her favorite songs. And times, for a moment, Mrs. Hartley would seem to recognize her, her eyes lighting up with a flicker of recognition. Despite the challenges, Dr. Kumar also saw moments of profound beauty and grace. He saw the unwavering love and devotion that Rose had for her mother. He saw the resilience and strength that Mrs. Hartley displayed even in the face of her illness. He saw how Rose learned to adapt to her mother's changing needs, finding new ways to connect with her and to bring her joy. She filled their home with music, art, and familiar objects. She read to her from her favorite books. She took her for walks in the park, pointing out the flowers and the birds. And he saw how Mrs. Hartley, despite her cognitive decline, still retained a sense of her former self. She still enjoyed listening to classical music, still appreciated beautiful things, and still responded to kindness and affection. One day, Dr. Kumar received a call from Rose. Her mother had taken a turn for the worse. She was no longer eating or drinking, and she was becoming increasingly unresponsive. Rose had decided to bring her home, to spend her final days in the comfort of her own surroundings. Dr. Kumar visited Mrs. Hartley at her home. She was lying in her bed, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow. Rose sat beside her, holding her hand. He sat with them for a while, offering his support and comfort. He knew that there was nothing more he could do medically. All that was left was to provide comfort and to bear witness to their love. As he left the house, Dr. Kumar reflected on his role as a neurologist. He could offer structure. He could offer medications that slowed the progression, routines that helped, and support groups that held. But he could not stop the clock. What he offered, truly, was understanding, that they are not alone, that the changes, the mood swings, the fear, the shadows of old habits are part of the journey, and that love, though evaluated, still mattered. He knew that he could not cure Alzheimer's, but he could offer compassion, guidance, and hope. And times, that was all he could do. And times, that was enough. He knew that Elena would continue to love and care for her mother until the very end. And that love, in the end, was the most powerful medicine of all.
A different kind of goodbye. John had stepped off the plane an hour ago, suitcase dragging behind him like a stubborn shadow. He moved through the crowded airport with a stiffness that came from months, no, a year away. Work, travel, avoidance. If he were honest with himself, avoidance was the heaviest burden packed in his bags. Now, walking toward the waiting car, a mix of relief and dread knotted in his stomach. He was home. Home to Clara, to their mother, and to a reality that had quietly transformed while he was gone. Clara was the first to greet him at the door, her smile a little tight, her eyes holding stories that had not yet found words. "Mom's had good days and bad days," she said softly, pulling him into a hug. John nodded, pretending he had prepared himself for this. He thought he had. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Mom sat in her favorite armchair, a faded shawl draped over her frail shoulders. John dropped his bags and went to her, heart pounding as if he was a student again, hoping for approval, for recognition. She looked up from her knitting, eyes clear for a beat, and then she looked through him. Not just failed recognition, but like he was a ghost passing by. "John," he croaked. She blinked and shook her head, her expression unreadable. "Who are you?" John's breath caught. "It is me, Mom. Your son." "John." Her eyes flicked away and the room seemed colder. He stumbled back, a surge of panic rising. He had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head. The reunion, the laughter, the stories. Not this. Not her. Not knowing him. Later, Clara pulled him aside, her voice a whisper. "Do not take it personally. Days she calls me her sister or a nurse or even that bird she had when we were kids. She smiled sadly. It is the dementia, John. She is losing pieces of the map. The days that followed were a bittersweet blend of familiarity and strangeness. John and Clara spent long hours cleaning out their mother's closet, sorting through the remnants of life slowly fading. The clothes hung silently, a silent testimony of the years when their mother was vibrant and strong. The flowing dresses, the tailored blouses, the scarves she used to wrap around her neck like armor, none of them she wore now. She preferred softness. Plush robes, the pink slippers John had given her one Christmas. Threadbare but cherished. Mirrors became a battleground. Times Mom would glimpse her reflection and recoil, frightened by the face she no longer recognized. John understood then that dementia not only steals memory, but also identity. The woman he saw was not just losing past moments, she was losing herself. And yet, amidst the shadows, there were moments that broke through like shafts of sunlight. One evening, sitting quietly beside her, John heard her humming softly. It was a lullaby, the very one she used to hum to them as children, a melody full of comfort and love. His heart squeezed as he joined in, the tune knitting them together through the cracks. Another afternoon, she clutched an old photo, a faded sepia image of their father. She whispered his name, slow and trembling. David. Tears welled in her eyes, and John reached out, squeezing her frail hand. She looked at him then, a smile dawning, innocent and pure. The smile did not hold a name. She did not know it was him, but it held recognition for love. And for now, that was enough. They were still here, together, in this changing landscape. It was not the homecoming John had imagined. It was thing different, harder, quieter, raw with loss and tenderness. Every day was a lesson in patience and grace. Dementia stole the roadmap, but not always the heart. So they learned new ways to say goodbye, slowly, tenderly, repeatedly. John sat beside his mother that night, running his fingers through her thin white hair. As she drifted to sleep humming their childhood song, John knew this was love in its purest form. Love that holds even as memories fall away. Love that adapts. Love that never lets go. He was home, and though everything had changed, things remained.
Miss Hill, is there anything that you would like to add to our subject this afternoon about dementia?
Thank you, Clara, for helping me to define and clarify dementia and its many life-changing episodes. I will say that the disease is a new caring phase for me. It is a learning experience, and we all will go through it at one point in life.
Thank you, audience, for joining our podcast this evening. Dementia and Alzheimer's can be a difficult subject for families. It is important that all middle-agers learn patience in their parents' time of need if possible. Give each person that is going through dementia time and space. For the caregivers of a dementia patient, remember that you cannot solve or define the disease in general, and give yourself a break. Step away from the task and enjoy your own life.